And welcome to WPLDN. Thank you so much for joining us. I am pleased to say we have gone live and everything has just happened perfectly this time. First off, I just want to say a quick thank you to my co-hosts Diane, Paul, and Leo for joining us this evening. We are just going to introduce a couple of go through a few quick bits of housekeeping this evening before we get started. So this is the WordPress London Meetup. We are obviously running our events virtually at the moment, so things are a little bit different, obviously. We are trying to enable our events to be as similar to an in-person event as possible. So thank you very much if you were able to just join us in our social over on live.bigorangeheart.org. We hope you're enjoying the format of having the tables, the ability to move in and out between tables and connect with other members of the community. We would love to hear your feedback, hear your thoughts on it. There was a lot of discussion going on the tables just now. But if you do have anything at all, both good and bad, we'd love to hear from you. So this evening, our format, we've got two speakers lined up. Really looking forward to hearing both of those. But before we get started, I just wanted to mention that these events are made possible thanks to Big Orange Heart, the team of volunteers. So Diane, Leo, Paul, and many others who are in the background right now. I just want to say a personal thank you to you all for being here and enabling us to have this event.
Oh, thanks, Dan.
You're very welcome. And on that, our hosts, myself, Dan Maybe, I'm the founder of Big Orange Heart. Diane, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm Diane. I'm a freelance WordPress theme and plugin developer. I specialise in custom themes and plugins. And I'm also co-organiser of WordPress London.
Excellent. Paul, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Smart. I run a small agency just outside London, Smart Digital, and also on the sponsorship team for Big Orange Heart.
Excellent, thank you. And of course, last but absolutely not least, Leo.
Hi, I'm Leo. I run a digital sports agency called Sotic, who deliver large sites in the world of sport for governing bodies and federations using WordPress.
Fantastic, thank you. Okay, if you do have any questions at all, then if you are over on live.bigorangeheart.org, you will find on the right hand side of your screen a live chat. Please do use that. We are actually going to be having a live AMA later on this evening with Jenny. So I'll go into more details in a moment, but if you do have any questions in relation to remote working at all, then do drop them in the live chat. We'll be sure to grab them and we'll be dropping them as we go through our talks. Also, feel free to connect with the community. It's why that's there. Let's make sure we can chat and continue the conversations whilst we're all distributed like this. So, just want to give a very quick shout out to our sponsors. It wouldn't be possible if we weren't supported by these wonderful companies. So, passionate about making the web a better place, Automatic. Your managed cloud host platform, Cloudways. A turnkey solution for product vendors, agencies and developers, Dolly. Generate more leads for your digital agency, Funnel Packs. The WordPress multilingual plugin, Weglot. Tips, tricks and resources for people who use WordPress, Winning WP. Your all-in-one WordPress platform, WP Dev. And the search engine optimization plugin for WordPress, Yoast. As I said, these companies are enabling us to be able to deliver these events and deliver so much more. Each and every one of these companies is currently supporting Big Orange Heart, which is Big Orange Heart is a registered charity, and they are enabling us to be able to deliver free mental health and wellbeing support into the remote working community. So could I please ask that in your browsers right now, you open up a new tab and type big.ht/thanks. that's going to put together a nice, neat little tweet, which is going to be sending out a nice thanks to all of our sponsors. We really would be grateful if you could support, say a thanks to the sponsors that are supporting WPLDN and the wider Big Orange Heart event organisation. Also want to say a quick thank you to Blue37, Paul Smart even, and Sotic for giving time. So these are companies that have volunteered time into this organisation and are enabling us to deliver these events. So again, a big thank you to them. So on to tonight. I'm particularly excited about both our speakers this evening. We have Matt Medeiros, who is there's a personal connection for me here in relation to Matt and what he's done with the Matt Report. Really looking forward to talking about marketing both our products and services with Matt shortly. And after that, we are going to be having an AMA with Jenny Wong, who, if you've not come across Jenny, I would be very, very surprised. She is a fantastic supporter, ambassador, member of the WordPress community, making a lot of noise throughout the community, a lot of positive noise. So really looking forward to having that conversation with her later. But first up, our community announcements. So this is where we hand it over to you, the community, over in the live chat on live.bigorangeheart.org. If you're aware of anything that's going on in and around the community, it's really an opportunity for you to stick your hand up virtually and let us know. We'll make sure we get it shared on the screen here. We'll be able to talk about it if we can. So if you have anything that you want announced within the community, feel free to drop them in the live chat over on that right-hand side. Jenny, you are making me blush. Excellent. Whilst we wait on those community announcements, if anybody has any at all, there are a few things that we wanted to cover off and make you aware of. First up, Yoast. I thought this was really interesting. Yoast acquiring the Duplicator Post plugin, bringing with it the 3 million active users of the plugin. What I particularly liked about what Yoast himself had actually written within the post in relation to this was it does one thing, one task, simple and well. I don't know, have any of you had an opportunity to, in the past, have used the Duplicator plugin at all?
Yeah, we've used
Yes.
it. We've used it all the time. Mm-hmm. Yep, and you're absolutely right. It does one thing and it does it very well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've used it. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say the same. It works really well.
There's a lot of people on the chat that said that they've used it. What's interesting, I think, is that it's going to enable Yoast and others to clean up those sites where you are getting bad things, because there just isn't a duplicate in there. There is a duplicate. It isn't anything new in that post, and to make sure that what you're actually producing in terms of content has SEO value.
Absolutely. And great news, obviously the original developer Enrico is joining the team over at Yoast as well. So congratulations! I think congratulations to both Enrico and the Yoast team. Okay, up next, community online events. This is a big one. We appreciate that there are a lot of online events going on at the moment. They're in fact actually on this Make page, make.wordpress.org/community/events/online. They're listing all the a number of WordPress related events that are happening. There are actually 23 events happening today. So if you are here with us tonight in this event, or this afternoon, or this morning, whatever the time zone happens to be for you, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us this evening.
As you say, there's a lot of events on at the moment, and it's amazing how also those events have different appeal and a different experience. So it's good that there is the diversity in the type of events that are being delivered.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
Do we think that most events going forward will have a virtual version? I mean, I know most events have played around with like live streaming, but I wonder if this will mean that it ups, kind of people now consider it much more essential I think what's been really nice is that we've had people from all over the world joining us and asking about the event, and also it makes it much more accessible as well. And I think if one positive thing comes out of this, it would be really nice if all events had some sort of virtual presence as well. I think it's.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean,
Totally agree.
what's been really good for WordPress London in particular, we've been leading in, as you know, in doing that. So we've been live streaming for a really long time before even I got involved, and I think virtually every event that we've put on in the last 3+ years, Dan, we've attempted to live stream. It doesn't mean to say we've actually achieved it in every single time. But we've attempted to live stream everything. And you're absolutely right, Diane, to be able to reach out to people that for different reasons, it's not just travel. There are other people who maybe find it inconvenient or just difficult to be able to attend something. And it's great to be able to meet those people and to enable them to be involved in the community.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we've certainly discussed as a team internally already around the idea of continuing a virtual element of the WordPress London meetups beyond this current situation. And as we said, I mean, every point that's been raised here is equally important. I mean, the accessibility aspect of this, I think, is a really incredible opportunity to be able to deliver this content to a far, far wider community.
I think the other thing is it's not just about the accessibility, and we covered this in the lunchtime meetup 2 weeks ago. There's also a green element to ensure that we aren't just burning fossil fuels to attend something when you can attend it virtually. Even for people like myself who live on the edge of London, it's still costing money and still costing energy to actually attend something that's in central London. That said, I found that the beers on the online one have been as great as the ones in the past. But I think that's because Paul hasn't been spending enough.
And continuing on with the online events, we've got this weekend, we've got WordCamp Denver happening. And how fantastic is this? WordCamp Denver, we're sitting over here in the UK and we have the opportunity to join the event. And what a cracking lineup of speakers, I've got to say. I don't know if anybody has the opportunity to look at the schedule for this WordCamp, but I'm really excited about the schedule. And again, tickets free. The fact that you can join this, a 2-day conference. What I am really excited about in this, one of the things I'm really excited about in this, when I looked at the schedule, the first thing I saw is the very first item on there, before even the opening remarks, is a 30-minute yoga session. So you can actually join in and actually take part in an online yoga session to get you prepared, because obviously sitting in front of the screens for half a day or however long the event happens to be, you need to make sure you're moving, you're active. Obviously it can be quite unhealthy spending a lot of time sitting at the screen. So it was interesting to see that yoga session right up at the start there. But this is a three-track event over 2 days plus 2 workshops. I mean, I think that's hats off to the organisers of this event and many others to be able to pull this together at this time.
Yep, okay. I'm agreeing. I don't have much to add to that one. But as you say, it's to get it will be really interesting to see afterwards, or how the diversity is increased. And I don't mean I just mean in the spread of the knowledge diversity in the community, because of the fact that people are able to attend events that they wouldn't normally attend. And that will be interesting to see if it helps with that knowledge transfer around the industry.
That's very, very good point. Okay, so moving on with the events, we've also got, excuse me, if you look at central.wordcamp.org, you will find the upcoming WordCamps. On there, excuse me, something's caught my throat there. On there, you will find, obviously, the upcoming WordCamps. In this current climate, we appreciate, obviously, there are a huge restriction on the number of WordCamps that are going ahead. This, interestingly, we've got 2 that are listed as happening in person. WordCamp Geneva and WordCamp Athens, both scheduled for October, excuse me, 10th of October and 24th, 25th of October, And I just thought it was interesting to see that these events are, still up there as in person. It's
Yep.
certainly a difficult one, this, isn't it? Making these decisions, making these calls. How do we move forward? And of course, I would assume that these WordCamps will also be preparing to deliver them virtually as well. But it's I thought it was interesting to see some in-person events up there on WordCamp.org.
Well, they have to come back.
Mhm.
And it will, which is natural. It's what does in person mean, and how does it adjust? That will be an interesting experience. But good on them to try. We have to keep doing that, and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think you're.
Sorry, Dan.
But that's right. I was going to say, I think that, kind of that there has to be an event that is the first live event, and I'm guessing that they're hoping that kind of, if there's not a second wave and the numbers keep coming down, that with social distancing, it's possible. But as you said, I'm sure that they are also preparing for a virtual event, because we just don't know, do we?
That's right. It's a big responsibility, isn't it? That making that call.
Yep.
And of course, it's I think slightly more complicated because we're a community of volunteers delivering these events. So there needs to be that ongoing conversation around responsibility in relation to this, which I appreciate is an incredibly complex thing and an incredibly complex discussion to have. Okay, this one, PHP, minimum PHP requirement recommended to 7.2. So this has happened recently, December. So interestingly, December 2018, approximately 83% of users were on an unsupported version of PHP. Now today, with the progress and the encouragement of the Site Health Project, that number has dropped to 47% are on an unsupported version of PHP, which I thought was an incredible drop in that time frame. Oh, sorry, I've gone
I
full
think
screen.
our technology and our way of the way of dealing with these updates is becoming mature. And I don't just mean in this environment. I mean the same. There was an interesting report on the number of iPhones on what version of iOS they are on. The days of people warning you about doing updates and don't do your updates because it could crash something is hopefully gone, or is going, and the sensible approach is to do your updates because it's less risky, and it gives the benefits. And I think this is right. We shouldn't be supporting outdated code, not just for the point of view of security, but it's also point of view of the speed and performance and the cost of supporting that code. And that's great to see that it's moving in that direction. And I think they made it. Is it 7.3? They've made it as the minimum. Oh, they're
7.2.
7.2. That's right. 7.2 is the minimum recommended, but 7.3 is what people are sort of saying is where you should put it onto. Sorry, I did the wrong order around.
Yeah, because we got 7.2 is end of life November this year.
Okay.
So
if you're going to do it, it's almost go 7.3. Is that what you're saying?
Or 7.4.
7.4.
Excellent. Okay. Did we have any other comments? I'm sorry, I haven't had an opportunity to check the live chat myself. I don't know if we've had any other come in from.
Just a few other comments on that. People that are coming up anyway talking about the version supports, and very happy about that. If I'm reading that correctly. The main thing was Mike Woodridge has said that version 5.6 is higher percentage than is ideal, but it's still a progress, and we will get there. We'll get there with all these things.
Yes, yep. Excellent. Okay, so moving on. As I mentioned earlier, these events are delivered by Big Orange Heart. Big Orange Heart was previously WP Up. So if anybody out there is a little bit confused, WP Up has pivoted recently into Big Orange Heart. It's a registered charity with a mission to support and promote positive well-being and mental health within the remote working communities. We have just released our open transparency report in relation to funding and financing and how that money is actually used across the project. Now, on average, it takes £10,251 per month to deliver the free support that Big Orange Heart delivered through 2019. We delivered a little over 7,500 hours of free support into the community. So if you take that on a mean average, we're looking at an average cost of £16 an hour to deliver free mental health support to community members. So this obviously comes at a cost, and we are incredibly grateful to every single company that is on our boards this evening, that is supporting this event, because they are enabling us to be able to deliver that free support. So a big thank you. But if you are part of a company, if you are employed by a company, if you run a company, then we would love to have a conversation with you to see whether or not supporting this charity through sponsorship is something that you would potentially be able to take on. We appreciate that right now there is a huge financial implication in relation to what's happening. We fully support the message of being financially responsible. So we're not expecting, there are no expectations in relation to this, but for us to be able to continue to deliver free support, unfortunately, it does come at a cost. So we need to find ways to work with companies and individuals. So if you are, have the ability to make maybe a $10 donation, big.ht/give is the place to be able to do that. There is also a link if you are in live.bigorangeheart.org at the bottom of your, just underneath the video here, to donate. That will take you out into a new window. $10 a month honestly makes a huge difference for us to be able to deliver this free support. So we would really appreciate it. If you have the ability to, but as I say, we do also support the message of being financially responsible at this time. Okay, so on to tonight. I'm going to take off my slides and I am going to invite one Mr. Matt Medeiros to the screen. Matt, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Matt, so Matt works at Pagely as an account executive for big brands that need to scale WordPress. And you're going to be giving your talk, marketing your WordPress product and services for us this evening. Obviously an incredibly important subject.
Well, I hope so. I hope, number one, I hope I'm making the talk, and number two, I hope it's valuable. So this is my first international speaking gig, so the stress is pretty high.
Traveled a long way for it.
Listen, you should have seen the airports. It was crazy.
You made it across the interwebs nice and safely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This, I've mentioned this a few times when we've been on podcasts and various things together, but there is for me, there's a deep respect for you, Matt. Your Matt Report podcast that's been going. How long's that been going for now?
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
So I must have been consuming that very early on.
I feel so bad.
They were hugely impactful for me personally. And if you haven't had an opportunity, mattreport.com is a place to go and visit to consume the Matt Report podcast. Also, store.mattreport.com is another place to head to right now. Oh, I think, Leo, we're fighting banners. The link is up on the screen there. Matt, you've been very generous. So the cap that I'm wearing here, along with various other bits and pieces within the store, you've been donating the profits into WPNUp/Big Orange Heart. So again, a deep thank you for doing that and finding a unique way to support the charity.
Yeah, no, thanks to all of you for that. Run the charity. I think it's super important, and happy to help.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, have we got some slides? I'll bring those up.
I do. I'll share my screen.
Excellent. And just while Matt is doing that, as I've mentioned, if you are over on live.bigorangeheart.org, we've got the live chat over on the right-hand side of the screen. I don't know where I'm pointing, but Matt will be holding a live Q&A at the end of his session. So please, if you do have any questions throughout the talk, drop them in the live chat. We will grab them and we will display them up on the screen. So please do feel free to ask any questions. Matt, I see we've got your slides up, so we're going to drop out now and hand the stage over to you. Thank you very much.
All right. So, like I said, This is my first international speaking gig. Hopefully, you find my talk on marketing WordPress stuff fairly helpful. It's geared to a little bit of product, a little bit of services type of WordPress people. So it's for anyone who's in this sort of early stage product or service cycle, specifically in the WordPress ecosystem. You might find marketing difficult. Usually when I talk to people about marketing or about business in general, I often run polls just to keep a pulse on what I should talk about on my podcast. I'll always ask about things like, is it product creation? Is it finding talent? Is it sales? Is it, running the actual business, or is it marketing? Like, what are the most challenging pieces? And for most people, it's marketing, which I would imagine is also a little bit of sales in there too, when you pull back the curtain. So my approach is the approach that I've used for well over a decade, running a business, and even still today with Matterport and Pagely. So I hope you find it useful. This sort of concept. This is the first time I've also used a Canva presentation. I've never done it before, and I'm specifically only picked it because there is a literal animated GIF of a handshake happening here. This is a concept I have called the Digital Handshake. So this is taking that split-second moment of meeting someone in person and turning that into your own personalized digital handshake. This is something that's evolution, not revolutionary. So let me just set the stage for you. I grew up in the car business. I sold cars all my life. My family owned a couple of car dealerships growing up. Hopefully that didn't lose too many people in the audience. But I grew up in small business setting, selling cars, and we weren't this massive. I don't know what it's like maybe in the UK or in the European regions, but there are some really big car dealers over here in the US, and they're high pressure sales. They take your keys and don't give it back until you close the deal. We were never like that. We were family owned. People who worked for us, it was their only job for decades, right? People who worked for us, it was the first job they ever got. 40 years in working with our business before we sold it off back in 2007-ish. So when I was selling cars, a huge thing was shaking somebody's hand. They walk onto the lot. You get to learn a lot about somebody. And I know that many of you that are agency owners or consultants can probably relate to this, especially if you're meeting people in person. There's a pretty strong dynamic there when you can be in person with people, and it's come 360 in the world we live in today. Handshakes might even be illegal moving forward, but there was so much to be said for having that handshake. And I think we can do the same thing, but with our digital presence, blogging, podcasting, YouTube, everything that we have digitally to market ourselves, I think can represent this digital handshake. And it's something that is going to evolve over time. And I think that when people say they're afraid of marketing or that marketing is challenging, it's because they're trying to bite off too much than that they can chew at the moment. But the one underlining thread, I think, in a lot of us, I can't see any of you, but raise your hand if this is true, it's confidence, right? And listen, I was always, the short, fat guy and growing up, and my friends were all basketball players and sports players. And growing up, there was always a innate confidence issue, right? Growing up in the car business quickly changed that. They quickly changed the confidence. When you start to hear, no, I don't want to buy, or no, this is not the right vehicle for me, and then that transcended into running an agency and selling products, like you start to get a thicker skin through the practice of selling and pitching your product and marketing your product. So it's important that you build some confidence and understand that you have the best product in the world. This is purpose built to solve the problems of your customer. If you're building a product, it's purpose built to solve this issue. If you're selling a service, you're there to solve somebody's problems, and you should feel confident in that, right? This shouldn't be something that allows you to be too timid. And the second half of this is it's profitable, sustainable, and people love it. So sometimes we get wrapped up. I know when I first started my agency, it was not profitable. Like we were losing money, or I was making absolutely no money. I think I started my agency when Facebook came out, and we had this package for $50 a month. We'd manage your Facebook page. Ridiculous, right? You'd make no money. It was not sustainable. People loved it because it was cheap, but it was not profitable. It was not sustainable, and very important. This is all going to translate into your marketing. So it's confidence without arrogance. You don't have to feel like, sometimes people can conflate the two, especially in sales. So confidence is not arrogance, or you shouldn't lean in that direction. And helpful is not naive, right? You want to be confident and helpful. The people coming to you to buy your product, to learn about your product, and the marketing and the messaging that you put out should have some confidence, and it should help people. Okay, you don't want to get taken advantage of, and you don't want to come off too strong. And the other thing I think is very important is purpose and opinion. Like, why do you do what you do? I mean, anybody who's an agency owner or consultant out there can probably relate to this. When customers come to you, like, they don't have a website. They've never been online before. You start working with them. They say, I don't even know where to begin. You say, well, we're going to start with at least a homepage and an about page. Why did you get into business? And you can tell the people who have run traditional businesses for, decades, or if not years, they're stumped. They don't know how to talk about themselves. They don't know how to unearth that storyline. And it's vitally important for those of us who compete in this digital landscape. What is your purpose and what is your opinion? And don't be afraid to share it, because, in the worlds of Amazons and Apples and Googles, these are all massive companies. And this is that digital handshake, that purpose, that opinion. That's what's going to build the trust that we need to market and close deals and get more customers. So I have this purpose/opinion, I guess you could call it, is I'm very much what I would define, and I don't know if this translates over to the UK, but blue collar digital worker. Like somebody who is not this, advanced developer, 75 years in college, I'm making $400,000 a year because I can code. It's somebody who has the power to, or the ability to leverage the power of WordPress, put out a good product, work hard for their customer, get paid a valuable price, and satisfy the customer. Just do good work in the digital landscape. I think that's a thing. Okay, I think this is a thing that we can all embrace. So that's my purpose/opinion. And the other reason why I think folks might struggle with marketing is there's tons of information out there. There's tons of knowledge for you to look up, videos to watch, podcasts to listen to, blogs to read. But for me, marketing is a habit. It's just it's not just a tactic, right? So, excuse me. So when I talk to people, I know a lot of friends, or I have a lot of friends that have, WordPress products, WordPress services, SaaS-based businesses. And they're like, I don't do Twitter. I don't do any social media. I don't do email. I don't do blogging. Like they don't do any of these things. Many of them for various reasons, but one is it was just never became a habit for them. It never became a habit for them to broadcast their message or to connect with people out there, right? So it's easy to consume all of the marketing tactics flooding Twitter and podcasts, but the challenging part is to create habits. And I'll hint at some of these ways that you can create habits. Look, one of them right off the rip, I don't know if it's right here. So it doesn't have to be an hour-long podcast. It could be a 5-minute SoundCloud clip that you put together, right? Just using your phone, something like that. It doesn't have to be this full-on, YouTube channel that you have to get all kinds of lights and cameras and production stuff, but it could be just an Instagram story that you put together. It's not a series of blog posts. It could be just a monthly newsletter or even a quarterly newsletter. It doesn't have to be so consuming, and it doesn't always have to be a webinar. It could just be a live stream of you demonstrating your product, your plugin product, or your, one of the key values of your service. So don't let the whole thing overwhelm you. Don't let marketing overwhelm you, because we get hit with all of this knowledge that's out there, which is great. But sometimes we get all this knowledge. We don't do anything with it. We're sort of stunned because it's like, wow, I can do all this stuff. Focus in on taking little bites out of what works for you. So I contemplated putting this slide in. It's really just a representation of, why would you listen to me? Why would you listen to anybody? And So over the course of 12 years, I'm responsible for, at the agency that I used to run, about $2.5 million worth of services sold and about $200,000 worth of products. These are not astonishing numbers. This is over a decade with lots of failures, paying lots of people to work for me and lots of taxes and unemployment and all this other stuff that's included in that. It's a long road, but it can be done, right? It can be done. Great marketing, to me, just like it was in the car industry, just like it was in the agency space, and I still see today in the product space, it's about trust. And that word of mouth is still the most common means of getting business. It's not just which keywords did you put in your SEO, how many blog posts did you pump out today or this week or this month, what's your Instagram follower count, YouTube subscriber counts. It's about developing trust. At least in my opinion. Their great marketing is about trust. When we see a brand, when we hear a name, when we engage with a product, we immediately know that we either trust them or we don't. And if we don't, we have to do the research. And the best research, I don't know about you, but I start to research. Even, I had somebody go to put up a fence in my house, and I started researching people who build fences. And no one, at least in my area, had done a video, had blog posts, had tutorials, like had me understanding what am I paying for. I just got these big numbers thrown at me for fence. I was like, this is just a fence. I felt like people who come to us to buy websites and they're like, this is just a website. Like, tell me, sell me, educate me on why. Build that trust. So diving into some of the more tactful things that you can do, specifically to the WordPress space, is do more podcasts, and not host your own podcast, but be on more podcasts if you can. The challenge here is to have the right pitch, tell the right story, and to provide value. So, as Dan mentioned before, I've been doing this for like 7 or 8 years, podcasting, and I have people who just send me one-liners like, when can I be on the show? And then I have other people who send like their virtual assistants my way, and it's, hey, the CEO of XYZ company from this Fortune 5000 catalog wants to be, and then it's like somebody who doesn't even really care. They're just sending assistants out to try to connect with the host of a show. Understand that creating a podcast is a lot of work. So if you want to start a podcast, that's awesome. I 100% recommend it. But just understand it's a lot of work. So it's a lot of work for the host that you're asking. But have the right pitch. Provide some value. And this is a unique opportunity in the WordPress space because there are a lot of WordPress podcasts out there. There's tons. Every day somebody's launching one. And that's great. It really unearths a lot of people in the community that stories can be told. And this isn't just products, but for services too, for agencies. I run a local podcast. I live in New England, in fact, just south of Boston. So there's a lot of podcasts in my local area cropping up. I run one and I highlight local entrepreneurs, right? Totally devoid of the Matt Report. Nobody knows me as the Matt Report around here. Another interesting opportunity to connect with is there are a lot of YouTube personalities and tutorial makers, well, again, on YouTube, but in blog posts and review sites that you want to connect with. There are many great channels out there that are always looking for new content. But again, the pitch is it has to be unique. You have to provide some value. And you shouldn't just expect creators to cover your product or service just for the sake of asking. Have some value there. Share their posts a little bit, really build that trust with them first, maybe before even asking, to be on their show or to have them review your podcast. But definitely particular opportunities in both podcasting and YouTubing in the WordPress world. And I hope that a lot of this stuff eventually branches out into more traditional markets, right? So WordPress is a good size bubble that you can spend a lot of time like focusing your marketing on, but depending on what you sell and what you offer, you might need to branch out eventually. But WordPress is a great place to set that foundation, the WordPress community and the creators in it. And when all else fails, become your own storyteller and build your own audience. This is like the number one thing. This is the only way I know how to do it, is to be my own storyteller, build my own audience, to help others, to share your story, to share their story. I wouldn't be anywhere. I wouldn't literally not be here on this live stream. I wouldn't be working at Pagely. I would have never started anything if I didn't start my podcast. And I only started the podcast because those of you might know a company called 10up in the WordPress space. Jake Goldman, the founder, he used to live near me many, many years ago. And he started his agency the same time I started my agency. And I saw what he could do as an engineer and as a developer and how he could find people. And I was like, there is no way I can do what I literally can't write code like Jake. And I don't know anyone in the WordPress space like Jake. So I started a podcast. It was like it just happened to, like, I was going to do a blog or I was going to do a podcast. And I just happened to do a podcast. And that was that compounded, like you saw before, 12 years of making connections and reaching out to people. And that's how I grew my business, my products, and found new opportunity. Become a champion, help others online, Facebook groups, and more, right? Be that person who's helping as much as possible. Tons and tons of Facebook groups that are out there, Twitter, events like this, like become that champion. You know, you will not only help learn more about your product or learn more about the users, but you can then reinvest that knowledge back into your product. You become a champion helping about Beaver Builder or whatever, and you're in the Beaver Builder group and you're helping tons of people. You can uncover something as a solution and maybe build that into your product or start a whole new product or start a service around it. I've always led with becoming a champion for someone or some cause. For the agencies and the consultants in the room, productize your service. This is an age-old practice of, turning your practice, your agency, into something that into a productized service that somebody can buy. The great thing about productizing it, like maybe educating somebody to build a website. So maybe you sell websites for $5,000 for a complete engagement. Maybe you sell a course for $500. This isn't rocket science. A lot of people have been talking about this, but you can use that as marketing leverage, right? You can offer the course for free. You can offer consultation for free. And that can really help market your client agency abilities. I believe I'm out of time, and I might be right on the mark. Maybe. I don't know. I just want to say thank you. And here's where you can find me, at Matt Medeiros, at Pagely, at Matt Report, and youtube.com/plugintut.
Matt, thank you so much. Great talk, so much in there. Gold dust. Really appreciate you giving that talk for us.
Sure.
We've got many questions that are coming up across the various places. Trying to grab them from various places. I think we could probably start off with Nathan's question. Where was it? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, I've lost it. Do you happen to have it, don't you?
Nathan's question is, he's interested in Matt's experience in marketing a WordPress plugin, e.g. Conductor. I was wondering what he thought had changed in the wake of recent tightening of the economy and what he thinks of the ups and in the seas of downs. I can read. I can't say Nathan's well.
Yeah. So Conductor is a long tail. It's a story that in one of the slides I didn't put in that I contemplated putting in is keeping your product. Your product is going to do a lot of marketing for you, right? No brainer, right? The problem is that as entrepreneurs and as creatives, you just get excited for putting in features. You're like, everybody's going to want this, and then everyone's going to want that, and everyone's going to want this feature over here, and you feature creep your own product. And Conductor was a bit of that, right? We were very early to the game. Like, it's blocks before blocks existed, the concept anyway. And it was a very complex product, and which translated to be very hard to market and very hard to support. So keeping your product as simple as possible is the one thing I learned from that, and it was a massive lesson. The Easy Support Videos plugin that we created a couple years ago, much more simple, less features, less code, and it just sort of does its own thing. Whereas Conductor, we were really drumming that in terms of code and marketing and promotion. So keep it simple.
Yes. We've got a bit of a theme going on. I'll keep it simple message this evening. I think it's a really important message as well. It's the mantra for us at the start of 2020 for the charity was simplification. How do we simplify? How do we reduce? And then we decided to completely rebrand.
Yeah, and we're just trying to hold down accountable. We're just trying to hold down accountable to this keep it simple that we said at the beginning of 2020.
Yeah, and then we tested loads of new technologies for this event as well, keeping it nice and simple.
Yes. And speaking of that, Jenny's comment there, I love podcasts that have transcripts afterwards. I mean, for the podcast production, it's incredibly important, isn't it, in terms of the accessibility aspects of it, the SEO. There are so many wins in relation to this. Is this you've obviously got a lot of experience within the podcast field.
So that's actually one thing I have turned on and turned off over the course of years, and strictly because of time and money. It's really something that now that I am adding sponsorships back to the show, that I am going to reinvest in that. I used to pay somebody to do show notes, like more concise show notes, and then do traditional transcripts. The challenge is I'm giving 20% of all my proceeds to this organization. And, is there anything left? I just don't know.
So we've had another question in from Taco. What would someone have to bring to add value to your podcast?
So that's a great question. So first of all, the emails just have to be from one human to another. Some of the emails that I get are just ridiculous, right? Value-wise, I'm always thinking about, number one, the audience is always top of mind. And I can generally feel when it's very obvious when somebody wants to just come on and promote. It's just a promotion. It's like, get this new feature. We just want to get some airtime. So that's immediately discarded. You're telling, what the value point is. If you're saying things to me like, hey, I kind of already know what your audience is, and the best thing I can do for your audience is talk about why, XYZ. Like here's the value point that I would bring to your show. And not make it feel so pressured at the same time. Because I have a lot of people like, and if you don't do it now, I'm going to be somewhere else. Like, okay, see ya. I don't know. I already have like a book of people that I'm going to be recording, and we'll get to you when we get to you.
So, I mean, you mentioned it earlier about how you were thinking about doing a blog and then you decided to go into a podcast. Not putting you on the spot, Matt. What's coming after podcasts?
Oh, man. Well, I'm attempting to grow a YouTube channel, too. That's been fun. I think we still have, my personal opinion is we still have a lot of longevity in podcasting and the combination of YouTube. The biggest challenge is people are like, well, what should I do? Like, where should I start? You start to where you feel the most comfortable, right? Podcasting is difficult. It's fun in the beginning. You get to like 12 episodes and you're like, this is the best thing ever. And then it's like episode 13 and you're like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to organize it. I don't want to talk to people anymore. There's so much like back and forth. You want to find something that's, you have a comfortable cadence with. And I always look at it from a systematic approach. If you can do video, then that can spawn many different pieces of content. That can spawn more audio, that can spawn blogs, and that can really be the foundation for a lot of content. But I feel like podcasting is still... Audio is still a strong medium, intimate, personal, portable. You don't have to be looking at it, which a lot of people watch YouTube and they're not. Like I do that. I just listen, but there's a positive there in podcasting.
I think I would agree with you. I think the argument of always was has video killed the radio star is not there, even though that's now 40 plus years. We are absolutely still there, that the radio is and the audio is something, as you say, personal, that you can actually take to people. And, you do it exceedingly well.
Appreciate it.
You can also, for audio, I like to listen to something when I'm working. So you won't be looking at a video when you're working, but you could listen to a podcast when you're working. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
I like this comment. Oh, you've got that one up. Yep, thank you.
Yes, yeah, this is a really valid point, Ross. So thank you so much for asking this. I mean, Ross is asking from somebody who's not, kind of visually, not a designer, the visual aspects. And the question, I'll read the question. So, what tips does Matt have for someone who sells development services, not design, that's very non-visual? So many social media platforms and websites are visual in nature. How does someone like me communicate what I do?
Well, for me, and again, I'm stealing from somebody who has said this a million times in the past, is when you're selling or marketing, it's always about the destination. It's not, you're bringing the person to that destination. It's not just, hey, I have the best, comments in my code, hire me, right? Or I write, the most efficient lines of code. But what you want to do is illustrate what your services or where your services are going to bring your particular client, right? And if you can hone in, again, age-old marketing is creating an avatar or a customer profile of your best customers, then you're speaking their language. Like looking back on your portfolio of work, the 2 or 3 similar customers that you do business with most often, and can you speak to that? Can you speak to that destination, why they hired you, the value you brought, aside from just the code? And portfolios are definitely visual. So are there things that you can show that were maybe the end result? Maybe you only did back end stuff, but there was a front end to this project that the customer says it's okay for you to show off, and at least it gives somebody some gravity towards that solution.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, it's always a challenging one, that wasn't it? If you're because we're often talking, turn to social media, turn to Instagram, turn to Twitter, turn to Facebook. That's where you need to be, and it is so visual in its
I think you're right, but I think we've commented on it before, the slow burn of some of these things. There seems to always be this view that you have to deliver it, you have to be live, you have to be there and change. You want to get 10,000 people to download your podcast, your plugin in X number of weeks. That would make a good podcast if anybody out there thinks they could do that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be about the speed of getting these things. It's about the quality that you deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said earlier about the communication, the message, you bring that person along with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I'd be really interested around the topic of kind of repurposing content. Is that something that you're an advocate of?
Yeah. So I actually do this a lot with my local podcast that I do, because I have very limited time like everyone else. And I don't do that show as frequent as like the Matt Report and the YouTube stuff. So what I'll often do is, and I do a weekly, it's the only, which is hilarious. I just want to slap myself every time I say it out loud. It's the only podcast I actually send emails out on. So every week I send a weekly newsletter on. I don't do it for Matt Report. I don't do it for anything else. I do it for this one. It's the smallest list that I have. But I do that because I do one live stream in this Facebook group that I have for the local podcast. And then that just turns into the podcast. It turns into 3 posts, 3 separate small Instagram posts. And it turns into the summary of the email newsletter plus a little bonus content. And repurposing content there is like, it's a no-brainer, because when you have very limited time, it's a great way to, just like I'll just 2 live streams is a month of content for me, for that. So Matt Report, I treat a little bit differently. I don't really have a set plan for it as defined as the other one. It's much more about like me watching the news week to week and just seeing what's happening and scheduling guests out for every couple 2 to 3 weeks worth of content.
Yeah, I guess Nathan's pointed out that he does produce a lot of content himself. He does. The WP Builds. He does the Big Orange Heart podcast and various other projects, and he uses a service called Descript to create automatically create the written content out of the transcript. And again, coming back to the transcripts, that opportunity there to reuse and repurpose that content. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and these services are, relatively low cost in relation to hiring an individual to go through and listen and transcribe the entire the entire podcast or piece of content that you're producing.
I think there's also a view and a feeling that because you're putting something out live and that people are listening to it there and then or very close, that once it's gone, it's gone. But the reality is there is a lot of people that just don't, the volume that is out there at the moment, you just don't catch it all. You can put something up on Twitter in 10 minutes and 10 minutes later, unless your name is Donald, it's gone.
Yeah.
It's how do you do it? And as you say, Matt, you put all that effort into producing the product.
Yeah.
How do you keep reuse it?
Yeah. I mean, that's it right there, and when I talk to people who want to get into this game, that is exactly it. Because they hear that they should be blogging every day and Instagram and live stream and all this stuff. It's like, no, if you can, again, focus with YouTube or even just the podcast. So you pick video or audio first if you can, and then just use one of those as the building block for the rest of it. And it's critical.
I particularly like this sort of format and then converting this format into audio because reality is, apart from seeing Diane laugh, everything of this is audio rather than visual.
Right.
And the laugh is, is audio as well. So,
so when I started my Plug and Tut YouTube channel, which is just like tutorials and things like that, it was just going to be another component of the Matt Report, umbrella of content. And this is 3-ish years ago. And I was like, well, I guess I got to do what everyone tells me to do, is just create a ton of content. So I just created a ton of videos, and I just fell for my own trap. And I started creating, I think, 3 or 4 videos every week, plus everything else I was doing. And I went, I don't know, whatever it was, 3 or 4 months, doing this, creating all these videos. And I was watching the YouTube subscriber numbers, just just a little bit ticking up. And I was like, this is not worth it. I am done. I got to the point where I was so burned out creating videos that it was one of those cases where I said, I'm not even going to log into YouTube and look at it anymore. And I didn't for an entire year. And then one day, literally, one of those situations, I don't even want to look at it. It's like a bad customer. I don't want to talk to you. Don't want to look at your website. Don't want to see you again. And that's exactly what I did. And then one day I got a check in the mail from Google AdSense for $100, which is the minimum for AdSense. I was like, that's funny. It took 2 years to get an AdSense check. And then I logged in that day, and I had seen that the subscribers went from whatever it was, 1,000 to 4,000. And I did nothing for a year. And I was like, oh man, if I was just uploading more videos.
But is that just because the longevity of content?
Right. So that goes,
there,
it goes back to that evergreen.
Gets picked up.
Yeah. That evergreen effect, people searching.
I absolutely. I mean, and we all do it. You sit there and you want to get instructions of how to do anything. Open up a laptop, do something, do this. You just can't even how to do this plugin, how to use this, how to do that. You end up watching a video on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a generation that assume that is the way to instruct anybody on anything. That's not my car. And how you deliver it. It's a fascinating experience, as you say. Yeah. But I guess the problem is that, as you said earlier, Matt, you put something up and you expect there is that thought that I'm going to be a multimillionaire. I'm going to be a star instantly. And it just doesn't work that way.
I have lots of failure stories that I could share. I mean, and Conductor was actually, I don't want to say one of them, but when we launched it, I don't know, 6 years ago, whatever it was, I don't even recall. And we did a big live stream, whatever. We launched it that day, and I think I made in an hour $5,000 worth of license sales of downloads. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh boy, what kind of Porsche am I getting? This is good. This is it. I have figured it out. And it went from 5,000, and then for the next month it was down to $800. And I was like, what happened? I have fooled myself into thinking that I was going to be a millionaire. And it's just a lot of work.
Jenny has just asked exactly that. Could you? And she's on next, so we're teeing her up in a minute. that could you come back and share the failure stories? I think that's it. I think people like road crashes more than they like the than the success.
There's definitely something, failing forward is a
Right.
thing, isn't it?
And
So
I
long as we
think
keep moving forward.
on that point, I think we should bring this one up.
Yes.
And if anybody knows, Nathan, to ask about one day we will commute again, commutes, as most of us know, Nathan, he commutes from his room to another room and has done for a very long time. And so this is not really the ideal person to promote that point. But actually, he is right that, I wonder, and do you know about this yourself, Matt? Since the lockdown, has the listenership of your podcast gone up or down? And we're putting you a bit on the spot there.
So, well, first of all, if you were in the U.S., it's like nothing even happened, apparently. Apparently everyone, it's like it didn't even happen. Like, did we not forget what happened 2 weeks ago? So I didn't notice an uptick in the podcast, but YouTube tripled. So consumption of my YouTube content literally tripled since this all started.
Yeah.
I'm assuming people are building websites. Maybe people are hopefully getting into into consulting and freelancing, and they're out there trying to learn how to do some of this WordPress stuff. And that's awesome. I mean, in my eyes, one of the reasons why I love WordPress.
It is, and I think that's probably it. As I said earlier, we should see. I'm hoping we're going to see that this whole opportunity, because of the product we have that we all deal with day to day, is in the real world or in this world that works in this environment, that we're going to see success and building. It will be fascinating to know, maybe Jenny will know when we ask later, has there actually been an uplift in, say, the builds in the core? Has there been an uplift in the number of plugins that have been released? Has there been an uplift in all of those things because people are able to spend time on it? And obviously all that time listening to your podcast.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And actually, Jenny's just final comment there. The interesting idea of fail camp conferences where we talk about fail.
I'd love that.
It is, it is important actually to be open and to talk about these things. And there is so much to learn from this concept of failing forward and making sure that
they always say, don't they, that's when you learn from your mistakes. You don't learn from your successes, but you learn from your mistakes.
Otherwise, the Porsche will be outside.
I'm just going to invite you up on screen.
Spend all day talking about one of those.
Jenny, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. I thought that was an appropriate moment with your comment.
I've always wanted to go to a fail camp, but they're always like at times when I've never been able to go to them, but I've seen them happen all over the place. And some conferences will actually run a fail camp track, so every story in that track is just about like it literally your talk. The requirement of the talk is I failed at, and you have to share what the failure was. Like that is the only way you're allowed to like be on that track. And I think it's such a fun thing to really share those horror stories, because when you do share those horror stories, so many people are like, yeah, I'm not alone. Like I thought I was going wild about this thing, and it's like, no, we've also done that too, don't worry, we're also in that group.
There is so much value in that open discussion, that honest discussion about what's going on. It's something we've really heavily promoted at WPLDN when we were together in person. Let's be open, let's be honest, let's have those conversations, and incredible things do happen when you actually when people start to be open about these issues. It's really, really strongly encourage it. But Matt, I appreciate we have taken up your time. We are incredibly grateful for you travelling all the way over from Boston to join us this evening.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your talk. A lot of incredibly valuable content. If people are looking to connect with you, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, just mattreport.com and pagely.com is where you can find me during the day, and store.mattreport.com if you want to buy some swag and support a big orange heart.
We're fighting each other. Smooth. Matt, thank you so much. We really are very incredibly grateful. If you're able to, you're obviously welcome to come and join us in the social later on. We'll be there in about 50 minutes or so, depending, and it'd be good to continue some conversations, and of course in the live chat.
Awesome.
But for now, Matt, thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers, Matt. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Matt.
Bye.
Thank you.
Jenny, thank you so much for joining us. Really incredibly grateful again for you for you giving your time this evening.
Thank
So-
you. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. So Jenny is going to be actually offering an AMA, Ask Me Anything, in relation to remote working. So this really is over to you, the community out there on live.bigorangeheart.org or out on social. If you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, where else are we? YouTube, everywhere.
Everywhere.
We are going to be, Paul and myself are going to duck out. We are going to be looking for your comments, your questions, and we're going to be bringing them over for Jenny, Leo, and Diane to discuss and to share. So please do, if you have any questions, drop them in the live chat, drop them in the social channels, and we will be with you with the various questions. So Jenny, over to you.
Thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Jenny Wong. I am an engineering manager now at Hummermade, but I started there as a web developer, so that's where my roots are. And as Dan hinted at the beginning of this whole evening, I have been known to do quite a lot of WordCamps. I get bored quite easily and then just come up with really interesting ideas and then rope everyone else to come and help me, like Diane. So, I like going on adventures with people, doing interesting things.
I don't think you sleep, do you, Jenny? I can't imagine that there's much time in your life for sleeping or resting.
Really well. I do very big, deep sleep. There's no sleep in there. It's like all or nothing kind of thing. So yeah, that is me. I have been a remote worker for 6 years and 1 month now. We're just coming into my 6th year, and we've just gone past my 6th year anniversary at Hummermade, which is how I count these years. And before that, I was in a office. Both everyone was in the office, and I've also worked as the sole remote worker to an office, which all those experiences are very different. So when we're talking about the way we work with each other, each one has its unique viewpoints. And I have asked, and Leo and Diane have agreed to join into the conversation, because I know, Diane, you've been a freelancer, I think, ever since I've known you, really. And then Leo runs an agency, Celtic, which you were, I believe, an office-based place, but also went remote quite recently, I think.
So we went remote. Oh, sorry, I went remote 2.5 years ago. When we moved the office to Cardiff, and went from commuting every day to remote now. Before all of this, the fun happened. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to watch people be forced into remote, because it's one thing to really feel like you get a choice about where you want to work, but then to be forced into be fully remote is quite interesting. And at Hummermade, we usually have members of staff in co-working spaces, or we actually do have an office in the UK, and people would work from the office. Not many people work at the office, because most of us don't live anywhere near it, but there was a small handful of people who would go to that office. So being forced to stay in our own buildings and houses has definitely changed the mindset, not just for people who are used to commuting to offices, but actually also for fully remote workers as well, because things that you thought you could do no longer are applicable anymore. If you have any questions, do please bring them up. I have got the hallway track on my second screen, so if you see me look away, that is exactly where I'm looking at.
So as you said, go on, Diane.
Sorry, I was really interested to hear, because I've worked with people that are used to working 100% in the office, and I when I became freelance, one of the things I loved is remote working, and I think you can do it either incredibly well, but people that aren't used to it find it incredibly difficult. And I wondered what your experience was of working as the only remote worker in an office.
I hated it. I hated it so much. I couldn't even bear it, because I had to. I almost quit my uni degree, my final year at uni, because I hated it that much, and I just wanted to be in the office and hang out with my colleagues. Because the thing about being the sole remote worker is you miss every single water cooler joke or that thing that happened that everyone's been talking about in the office, and they don't tell you about it. And I had to go to the office, I think it was every 2 weeks or like 2 to 3 weeks, I'd go to the office for one day just to like catch up in person and do like meetings and stuff on one day. And they would be like, oh yeah, blah, blah, blah happened. Or like, you know, the joke would carry on, but you would not know where that joke came from. So you always felt like a bit of a weird, I love you all, but I also don't know who you are kind of situation.
I think it's quite interesting. It's sort of like going on holiday, going back to the place 2 weeks later, and everything's moved on, and you find that feeling. So my office, so the majority of my staff work in Cardiff, or they did. You know, we had an office there, and I think you're absolutely right, Jenny. You feel detached when there's that split between remote and everybody in the office. It's finding that balance with the two.
Yeah,
So,
and one of the things we did when we ever have, so in HumanMade, sometimes colleagues, actually I've got colleagues who live quite close to me, and we would actually go and meet up at a co-working space, but we would end up on the same meeting. We actually had a rule in the company for a while, which was along the lines of, if you are in the same meeting, still connect as you are on your own, because this way everyone who's in the meeting has the same situation. Whereas if you have two people together and you're passing notes between each other, that's like, you know, there's a side thing going on that no one else knows about, and it's a bit unfair. So it's about leveling that playing field across the road, across the situation.
I agree. I think we've all been in this situation where you're in a remote meeting with 3 people in the office, and they suddenly mute you, and it's like, or they why are you muted? Or they mute themselves. Why are you muted and I can't hear what you're saying? It's like,
I know.
It's like,
what have I done badly this time? What did I spell incorrectly this time?
Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, there's a question up here which is interesting from Richard Bell. I don't think we've written it up yet, but is why do you think certain companies seem to struggle with the concept of remote working? And do you think it's a trust control thing? I mean, you've got that experience. What do you think?
I think it depends. There is definitely, if you are used to a particular situation, then yes, like doing something new is scary, especially when the current situation works for everyone, right? So like, why would you upset what works to change for something else? And that can be a little daunting. And so yes, trust does come into it, but there's also another side to it. The other side is the human aspect side of the fact that we are social animals. We can like certain amounts of social interactions as much, like, you know, in different levels, but even, you know, being with people who are consider themselves introverts or things like that, they like being in the same room as someone. There is some kind of like connection that you're in the same space, and sharing that space with people is quite important. And what you see more recently, for countries that have been in lockdown, obviously not all countries have been in lockdown, but for countries that have been in lockdown and imposed lockdown on all their citizens, a lot of people have really craved and missed social interactions, even at distance, with people that they don't usually interact with. So if you're with your family all day, you just want to get out of the house. You just need, you know, the delivery person who comes and drop off your parcel is now your best friend. Situation, you know, and so that there's a balance. It's a part of it is the psychological need, I guess, to be around a society of people and be part of a group and physically see them. And part of that is also, you know, trust. And it will, you know, it's a balance between the two. I can't always say it's one or the other. You know, it's going to be a mixture of things.
So we're talking about it from a company perspective. That always that question comes up. We get it quite a lot. I get it quite a lot. Is how do I know that person who's working from home is actually working? That trust level, you know, and that's it. And
yeah, that's a good question. I think it really comes down to the way you communicate. So there's we all do lots of work, right? Regardless of what role you do in a company or even as a freelancer with your clients, there's loads of invisible work that you do. Like, you know, writing up meeting notes is something that I, as an engineer, never appreciated, but writing up meeting notes takes time. Like it's not a 5-minute job. It's like a good 30 minutes, if not longer, depending on how verbose you need those meeting notes to be. But like, if you don't point out the work that you're doing to your other colleagues, how are they meant to know? We seem to assume, and this is the thing about remote working, is that we're all telepathic. And the reality is, if we were in the office, that telepathic knowledge you have comes from sight. It comes from hearing. It comes from, you know, the background noise that you're hearing, that you've heard someone's talking about a project. But when you're remote, your telepathy to your colleagues has disappeared. So you have to create that telepathy in another manner, and that's usually around communication. And if anything there is to take away from this conversation, it's over communication. There is no such thing as over communication in a remote space. The second you think you're over communicating, you're probably hitting about the right mark. And especially if you are working in a remote company that is spanning across the globe. Like, I need to write my notes that they're so verbose that the person in Auckland does not need to ask me 1,000 questions, because it will take a 12-hour delay before I get a response back. So if you imagine all your colleagues are out in space, and that time signal and that time lag is going to be, you know, hours, then you realize that you don't want to be waiting hours to have one conversation. You share as much as you can so that they can share as much back and as much detail. So the amount of ping-ponging of information is shortened.
So we've had questions along that line. What tools in particular do you find that you would use, Jenny? What tools do you recommend? And I'm going to ask that also to Diane as well, to make that experience better.
Diane, do you want to go first?
Well, I was going to say that the tools are brilliant. Like, for example, Slack. We all use Slack, but if you're working, like I recently was working with BrightTalk, and I noticed that a lot of the communication happened in private messages, and I tried to encourage people to actually post more in the public channels if they weren't specifically private. Actually, because then everybody else knows what you're doing, because otherwise it can seem like you're silent all day. No one has any idea what you're doing. And you know, unless it's private, and usually in most projects, there's not that much that you actually need to keep private. So it's not necessarily the tools, but I think it's the, you know, kind of, it's the way that you use the tools. And I think I think transparency, Slack is brilliant. But it's only as brilliant as you use it. You know, all of the tools that we have, email, Slack, you know, Zoom, they're all only as good as your actual practices. So it's like I said, it's not so much the tools, but using them in the right way. Sure. You know, kind of let everybody actually see.
Yeah, definitely. And knowing where your single source of truth is for your company as well. So at Human Made, we use GitHub. Like, if there's an issue in operations, there is a GitHub conversation going. And then there's also Slack. And then we also use, we actually have a multi-site of installation of WordPress, where all the blogs are actually basically blogs of the project. And we use that to be like kind of a newslettery style. That's really like, if it's written there, the communication's there, and it's searchable as well. The other thing that I totally agree with Diane, when you said like it's all about the transparency, I was like, yes, I'm like where's my 100 emoji? As well. How does someone know you've read that communication, right? So if you read something, like, communicate that you've read it, or communicate that you like it, and so a lot of like Slack conversations, I will thumbs up them to say to the person, I'm cool with that, like I'm good with that. You know, having those custom ones, and I have a little custom emoji that just says thanks, which really allows you to communicate without, like, you know, bloating up Slack, which can be a bit of a problem. And the same with like the WordPress installation we have reactions in our posts, so you can actually react to any of the posts, and GitHub also has that as well. But really using reactions as a way to bring in that body language, that word. Exactly.
That's Dan. Dan said that. Because one of the things, Jenny, if you can, maybe you can touch on it quickly. My understanding or my experience is that Human Made have got an HR manual online. How does that help in that remote communication or remote understanding of how to work?
It helps to a certain degree. I think it helps to set an expectation. But in all honesty, I mean, some people at Human Made have been here a long time, and it's really easy to get out of the habit as well. So sometimes we will use it as a way to remind people, hey, remember we all agreed to this conversing with each other. And it's like, you think a company like Human Made, which is fully remote we've been running, I think, fully remote for 8 years now. There was a couple of years when we weren't fully remote. And to say like people still get out of the habits, people still DM. And the other thing I'd say about DMs is actually, if you go on Slack and you have a conversation, and you're like, oh, can we just jump on a call instead? And then you have that conversation in Zoom or something, and then everyone's happy who are in the call. But anyone else who saw the thread and then the call and then nothing, we're like, well, what happened?
So, I mean, it's a classic.
Like, this is what happened in the call. This is the agreement, and then this is the agreement that we've come out of it.
I mean, I think we can always talk about. I mean, at the moment, Slack is the big thing that we use in a lot of the communications, because it just happens to be the one of the there. But I think, as you've touched on, there is that level of using it is more important than the tool. What are the tools though, before we go completely to another area? Are there any other tools that you feel are just the go-to that you need to, if you're in a remote environment, to use?
I feel like Zoom or like any kind of video conferencing call system is vital. And the reason why is because there is nothing like hearing somebody's voice, hearing the intonations in their voice and the tone that they're taking. If you're tired, you're going to be like, oh, I'm so tired. You can visually see, you start getting those like speaker hints and stuff that you get when you're doing these kind of stuff that you just don't get in text. The nearest you get is emojis, but so that's that. You have to balance the two and really use them both to your advantage. And some conversations are way easier in voice rather than in the actual thing. So do turn your cameras on if you can.
Isn't there a cameras on policy in Human Made, if I'm right, on certain things?
I honestly don't remember anymore. I have a camera on. If I am facilitating the call and you don't have your camera on, I do usually ask, can you turn your camera on? Especially if it's a difficult conversation, definitely turn your camera on. But sometimes, you've also got to be mindful of the fact that internet is expensive. It is a luxury, and the cost of turning your camera on for some people is actually quite high. So if the connection is really bad, you've got to balance it between, I'd rather hear their voice and not see them than, have a jaunted conversation where everything's really laggy. So you've got to really balance it. Even if it's in our handbook, there's the pragmatic side to how you run your day-to-day operations.
So this is going to be the question that we're probably all going to dread, because we always see the one view of everybody at home.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask whether you're going to do this or not, Jenny, because I haven't told you in advance. Are you willing to take a picture of what you're looking at and show us?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Diane. Diane's got that look of like, oh dear, I've been caught in the headlights now.
No, I might take a picture. I'm gonna. Oh.
I'm taking a picture as well. So, we ready?
Because
ready to show our pictures? Go.
So mine's got, because I've got blinds. I have, as I was discussing earlier, I have my desk in the window, which is lovely except for when it's 30 degrees outside, because I'm in a glass house.
So everyone, if you can't see it, but what you can see is a full bin on one side. You can probably, like, if I actually pull it out, there's a Coke can and a glass, which is actually quite good for my desk. My desk is usually about 3 cups of tea that are all half drank, about at least 2 glasses, about 3 or 4 Coke cans that are like all over the place. So I spend a lot of time at my desk. And
so
one thing
what would be the first thing if somebody's doing this new, or when we're all pretty much doing it, not we've been doing it for a while, what would you say is the best investment that you've made that somebody should be making to improve their experience from home?
The ergonomics of your setup, that's really important. And really, it's about investment. If you are going to be a remote worker long term, you need a chair that is going to support your body. And I know it's really expensive, but if you divide the amount of hours against the cost that you spend on it, it's actually not that bad. If you are a company that can afford it, trying to offset people's investments is really important. So HumanMade has a whole section on, office like equipment that we actually just pay straight out.
So are you allowed to ask what chair you're sitting on, or is that?
Yeah, no, go for it. I am on a size A Herman Miller Aeron, which is really good. This is
I'm on a size B. There you go. I have a size B and I have a spare size B.
And I've just realised I've got to get myself a decent chair. I think my dad gave me this.
I actually got mine. Sorry?
If you are going to get a chair, a pro tip, especially if you're planning to get a Herman Miller one, go on eBay. They're literally half the price and they're really good. Mine was an eBay one and it works really good. Even if it's a refurb, they are actually really, really good. And it's not all about how much money you spend on it. It's just literally like where you can get a good bargain. The desk, like we always get this with every new person, the desk. IKEA do a really good electronic sit stand desk, which means that you can get it to the right size. I'm 5'2" and my partner's 6 foot. When he sits at my desk, it looks like he's sitting at a children's desk. And when I sit at his, I feel like this.
I think these are valuable experiences because, as you say, you're spending a long time. In fact, in a way, I think I'm spending longer at my desk per day than I used to spend when I was in an office, because there isn't that. If I want to have a chat with somebody, I'm still sitting here.
Well, the thing is,
in fact, it's now 8:00 at night, 8:30 at night. I'm still sitting here.
And I can keep on having this conversation. And this is the magic of a sit-stand desk that is electric.
This.
Do not get the one that you turn. You're just too lazy to turn it. Just get the electric. One of our colleagues bought the
Diane, why would you know that Jenny would say something like, "Don't bother with that. It's too lazy. Do this." That's how Jenny is like. Don't argue. That's what Jenny says. Do it.
Honestly, one of my colleagues bought the one that uses a handle to turn, and I literally said to him, "How often have you turned it?" And he was like, "About once." And I was like, "Yeah, to get it to the right height to sit at." And I bet you never stood at it. And he was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Just dismantle it, send it back to IKEA, and get the other one."
I think it's a very valid point, because we've got, in our office, we've got all these height adjustable desks, but to adjust the height on the desk is so difficult.
And you get tennis. So I've got tennis elbow, and I've also got RSI from when I used to work at a coffee shop. And so I can feel when my partner has sat at my desk, moved my desk, and then my arms are just a little bit too high, my wrists are a little bit too high, and it starts, 2 hours in, I'm like, something's not right. Like, your body knows, and it starts complaining.
When this finger goes numb, that's when I know I have to go and make a cup of tea.
I thought, Diane, I thought it was when you had to make a cup of tea was when there's things being thrown at you from Mick. It's like.
Well, actually, Mick, Mick always, especially if I'm on a meeting, Mick comes in like this, and he does this creeping thing, which is really funny because he's wheeling one-handed with a cup, but he always brings me tea, and so everyone now thinks that, everyone now thinks that I have waiter service. Kind of, he times it so that when I'm in a meeting.
this is why the cups go at my desk and then they would go downstairs, and this is why he says there's a free cup limit on my desk, and they're always on my left hand side. But in terms of other things that you can do for your desk, I recommend really thinking about what you're using and making sure that your monitor is at the right height and your laptop's at the right height. It's about making things easy for yourself, especially if you're doing this long term. So I have a mouse here, which is one of those upright mice here. It's like a wired one because I'm too lazy to recharge my mice too often. So I got a wired one, and it's like that. This cost me £25 off Amazon, and it honestly is one of the best mice that I've used if I'm sat at my desk all day long. I also I have one monitor here and then my laptop on this side, and I will take some pictures and share them on Twitter because I've done this before. And it really, really makes a difference to the type of monitor you get. So if you're buying a new monitor, make sure you're getting one that actually works with your computer to the best way it's possible. So USB-C, where it's got all the ports in, so you can just put everything against the monitor. And if you do need to move out, it's just one cable. I know it sounds silly to think, well, the difference between 3 cables having to be plugged in and 1 cable has to be plugged in, that's not a big deal, right? But when I used to work in an office, every day I'd come to my office and have to put my laptop down and plug it in because I've been using it somewhere else. And 1, 2, 3. That's just like 3 too many things to do. And
I'm detecting a very long chain that can keep repeating.
Simplicity thing that we were saying earlier, isn't it? Keep it as simple as
I'm assuming, Jenny, you're in a house where if something doesn't last the dishwasher, it shouldn't have ever been bought in the first place.
Yeah, no,
That's
definitely.
That's it.
Any WordCamp cup or mug or a hot water bottle that does not last the dishwasher, it's
a waste of time. I'm absolutely with you on that. I'm absolutely with you.
My life, I just got too many. I don't want the stress. Being a remote worker is stressful. You've got to try and translate your colleagues, what they're saying. You've already had to like try and work on your communication so that you're verbose. And someone did ask the question about, whether you need to be a bit more verbose and if that means better documentation. The answer is yes, usually. But it takes time and practice, right? So really, like, if you can negate anything that makes your life difficult as much as possible, and it comes down to simple things like potentially if your laptop's too low, build yourself a Lego stand out of Lego and stick it on top, or get those books that you never use and lift your monitor up so that you're actually at the right height, because then you're sitting up straight. You're really thinking about your posture. When you change your posture, you change the way you breathe, and when you change the way you breathe, your brain has more oxygen and more energy to actually think about the things that you pay to think about.
How do you find
productivity though? I do put that caveat there.
How do you find, and this again to both, because I have this, sometimes I can sit there and I can sit down at 8:30 in the morning and suddenly realize it's 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And all I've done is I put the coffee machine on 3 times that I've never actually drunk the coffee because it's cold. And how do you find a way to balance that out, to get that free time?
I do. Let me demonstrate this to you.
Oh yeah, no, Jenny told me about this because I said about the heartbreak of discovering a half-drunk cup of tea.
So what's this, Jenny?
So my colleague Jay introduced me to this, and you can get USB versions of it. It is a tea warmer. In the middle of this, light it. It goes on your desk like this, and then you put your coffee on top. And then it keeps it nice and warm.
As long as it's only tea that you put in there, Jenny. That's all.
Yeah, no. It's only tea or coffee or whatever that you have. And the other trick is just to drink cold drinks. Like, come to set on
You mean like alcohol? Drink alcohol?
Yeah.
We're not saying that.
Mine, but I was just trying to look professional and not drink it on camera.
A question. I'm interested on another thing, which is audio. We've talked about various different things that you used, and you talked about Zoom. Do you have either of you used any audio communication between places? And the one that I use a hell of a lot at the moment has been Discord. Have you ever used that with your teams?
No, I know other people have done, and I have been on Discords for other things. It honestly really is about, as far as I'm concerned, the workflow, the agreement between colleagues or the group that you're working with, regardless of what project you're on, about the way you are going to communicate and making sure that there are retros, so you're reevaluating and discussing ways to improve it, and not being scared to say to someone, hey, your microphone sounds a bit like it's not in the right location. Can you try and adjust that? And being out front, or like you're saying, like your connection seems a bit laggy. Do you want to restart your computer? Yeah. I'm really being mindful of the fact that tech things break. I have been on enough calls where the internet breaks in the middle of a really important call to a client, and then I have to quickly switch over to 3G and pray they didn't notice and someone has got in my back. I'm being a little empathetic. We are all in this situation together, and we will come out a bit laughing, because if you don't laugh, you're probably going to cry about it, and it's not worth it.
Do you actually factor in regular breaks in your thing, and how regular do you do it?
The answer is no. But no, one thing I do actually is I really encourage my engineers, and I have done this a couple of times, is factor in breaks between my calls. So I have a rule which is 15 minutes between each call. So I don't ever take calls back to back until the very last minute, so like when things get changed. But I try, and when I'm designing my weeks, really design them with 15-minute breaks in between. That's long enough for me to run downstairs, put the kettle on, come back upstairs, go to the bathroom, wash my hands, get back to my desk, rearrange whatever I need to rearrange, and then take a deep breath and keep on going. And the other thing that I really recommend to engineers when they are really stressed out is actually start putting in out of office markers when they are going out for lunch.
That's a good point. Yeah. Diane, do you have the same sort of approach on those points?
The funny thing is that I only since lockdown have I actually started regularly taking lunch. I've had really bad habits where I would just sit all day and work through. And then because of lockdown, we got into this habit of going out for a walk once a day. And so now and of course it's been gorgeous sunshine. So I now take an hour at lunch, and I do, it's rather than taking breaks, luckily I drink a lot of tea, and that means I actually regularly get up from my desk. And that means that at least, the blood is moving around in my legs. But apart from the tea, I'm really bad at taking breaks until recently. And I've decided that what I'm going to try and do is keep this hour lunch break, because, I think that, sometimes you're working on you're a developer. Sometimes you're working on a problem. You can't stop. Yeah. I always say to people, you can't stop in the middle of a problem and then come back to it like 15 minutes later, because it takes a while to get back into that headspace. But at some point in the day, and it doesn't matter even if it's like 3 o'clock, then I take an hour and I go for a walk around, and yeah, so yeah, so lockdown has actually improved my working practices, and I'm going to try and actually keep that, because I think that it's kind of good to just have a break in the day. But
we talked about Slack and using that. Do you then have short codes that you use to communicate? That I use AFK, or our company uses AFK for that.
Yeah, we just shout lunch. And it's funny actually, because so depending, like you see the APAC team will start going for lunch, and then you start seeing them all disappearing, and then you see the EMEA team coming online and would be like, hey, like the mornings will start, and then you'd be like lunch, and everyone jumps on the lunch train, so everyone goes +1, +1, +1, +1. And then you use the back emoji to say we're already back. But in all honesty, I don't. I kind of try and remember, but sometimes I don't. Because there's other things, but I do always try and do an hour for lunch when I can. I actually get really angry when I don't, because sometimes you need that time.
We can't imagine that or picture that.
But it's just like you really need to, like, even just standing up and doing some nice big arm stretches if you have the space, and really just even one thing I do, now I'm stood up, I can just stand on my tiptoes and then just tiptoe up and down like this, and just wiggle yourself around, just kind of get yourself loose, because sometimes I do see people really struggle to concentrate, and all they need to really do is have a big stretch, get some air into themselves, deep breath, and that break actually helps them reset and try and figure out what they're doing. So it's really a balance between the two.
So moving on slightly, as you're a company, you get involved and you see other companies, and you're heavily involved in seeing what other people do. Is there what's the biggest mistake you're seeing with companies that really are coming new into this environment?
The biggest mistake I'm seeing really is the way that companies think they can just let all their employees go fully remote without any support, really, and that is the major bit. It is a growing pain that you have to go through that pain together. But I think really talking about that pain is really important, because when you share that pain in Slack, hey, has anyone got a solution for this? Or this is how I find out about things like this. Tea keeps on going cold. What? How do people get their tea done? Stay warm.
I think that's what we're here for today, really, Jenny. That's it. That's the thing you've shared, and that's if you feel nothing else of today, nothing is more important than how to keep your cup of tea hot.
We've done this for a long time about how trips and tips of how to stay cool in a UK household, which basically no one has aircon built into their house.
Exactly. We need that instruction for 4 days, and today is one of them.
I know, exactly. I will pro tip you all for tomorrow. Get your hot water bottles, put them in the freezer. Tomorrow, put it in your bed before you go to bed, and you'll have a really nice cold bed to go and sleep in. You're welcome.
Yeah, just don't overfill it, or you'll have a very, very broken hot water bottle.
About half, because that way it just isn't
It expands.
That's true. But yeah, no, I would usually say, like, if you're thinking about doing it remote, it's really about the company having the support structure.
Yeah. So on that one, and I know you've sort of covered that. What systems do you use to share knowledge while working remote? I know is there anything in particular that you choose?
Yeah, I usually, it depends on like the longevity of the knowledge that you are sharing. So if you're sharing a quick remark, probably Slack, because it's just a one-off remark. But if someone else finds it useful, we quite often tell each other, hey, that's really useful. Could you please like document that and copy it into one of the company's blogs, so that everyone can hear about it. Because if you remember, Slack is a continuous stream of consciousness. So someone from APAC is not really encouraged to, back scroll and read 2 regions worth of communication. That's not really sustainable. And you shouldn't expect people to read back scrolls. So it's great for, a certain amount of communication. But if you're expecting someone in a week's time to find that information, forget it, because they just press the all red button and it's not happening. Blogs, comments on blogs, and it's surprising what people will find useful. Like, we have whole sections, even in our handbook, there's a page about turning off notifications, because I found
absolutely
lots of people won't actually get into the habit of reevaluating what communication and notifications they're actually allowing to bother them. And then as an engineering manager, I see that all the time. And I naturally get angry with all notifications, so I turn everything off. But in there is actually originally written as a one of our private blogs, and so many people found it useful that's in the blog itself. They were like, hang on a second, that blog should be part of the handbook. Why can you copy and paste it? And I was like, sure. So, edit, post, copy, paste, move it to another blog, which is the handbook blog. And so everyone gets to see it.
So just the final question I have for you, Jenny. We're here. You've gone through this. You've now spent, is it 6 years, you said, remote working? Yeah. Can you see Jenny back in an office?
Definitely. I've seen people go back and forth. I've got an engineer who has been remote working for over 4 years, really started struggling at home before COVID. And then, we talked about, how we were going to work out of this. And they said that, they'd been thinking about, finding that, social network and getting back out there and getting out of the house. So they had a commute to the office. And so they actually started renting a co-working space. And then COVID happened. So then they had to go back home. But actually, their co-working space is opening up next Friday. And I know they are counting down the days, because they have told me, to when their co-working space is working. And actually, they found by being able to go to an office, this is really important, you are able to switch on for work and then switch off at the end of the day, which is really important. One of the biggest flaws that a lot of people see is the mirage between work life and home life just continually disintegrate. And so we have long discussions at work continually over and over the years about how do you switch on and off. So some people who have dogs will go for a dog walk at the beginning and the end of their day. Some people will literally leave their house, walk around the building, and then come back into the house to go to work. Everyone has their habit. I've seen people who insist on their lunches never being from home, so they will always go out for lunch, which forces them to get out the house, walk, go somewhere, get their lunch, and come back. It's that mentality of this is your break time, this is your time, and that's really important.
Diane, any last tips from you on this?
Yeah, so because a lot of the time I work for sort of clients in a freelance, it's that idea of socialization. It's the reason that I initially went to WordPress London. I think if you remote work, things like going to something like WordPress London for me was really important, because you it replaces that social life that you get from working with people. Because I realized that I have my family and I have my friends, They don't know what I do. Mick still thinks that it's the Matrix.
Yeah, we've
so-
had that discussion before. So he never knows. It's better he doesn't.
And so that's why initially that I went, I kind of realized that the one thing, because I love remote working, but there is that social aspect that you miss. And so I realized I could replace that by becoming involved in the community. And so my tip for anyone that is remote working and is struggling with talking to your peers in that, kind of in the way that you do in an office, then I think, kind of meetups can meet some of those requirements.
I agree.
I totally agree. I mean, this is why I go to so many, is like, my weekly, I see people.
We're gonna bring Dan and Paul back on. Thank you so much, Jenny. This has been I've really enjoyed this. It's a great conversation, and I'm going to pass back over to Dan.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Diane.
Honestly, if we could have a big round of applause. I know it's a bit strange, but there's so much good stuff in that talk. I mean, just serious gold dust throughout that. And I mean, if anybody is out on social watching this, you have the ability to rewatch this, and I would highly recommend it. bigorangeheart.org/YouTube if you want to go back and see these talks at a later date. Jenny, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And if anyone wants to get hold of me, thank you so much. Sorry. If anyone wants to get hold of me, do reach out, like either my work email or Twitter. I talk about this stuff all day long, so I'm happy. Like, it's like, we're on remote working. So if someone says, would you like to talk to me? I'm like, yes, please.
I would actually, yeah, absolutely. And it's not just there. Also, you can get Jenny on the UK WordPress Slack. Is another location, and also we've also got the Big Orange Heart Slack for those that want to communicate, because it's really important in this environment today. Sometimes you can just feel like you're talking to yourself, or you have nobody else around that knows what you're doing. And this is a great opportunity. We're here. We're all enjoying it. Sometimes we're also not enjoying the days, but it's a great opportunity. And I mean, I've listened to Jenny many times, and every single time it's like, yes, I want to listen to Jenny again. And that just shows why. It was brilliant.
Totally. Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Jenny. That was excellent.
Thank you,
Jenny.
So many
Jenny, are
wise
you
words.
able to stay around in the social afterwards? There was a couple of direct questions about where to get advanced tutorials on Git and things, which I think is probably better to be asked in the if you're able to join us on the chat on the social chat afterwards.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Excellent, Jenny. Thank you so much. It's such an important subject. So many things to continue this conversation, and just really appreciate your passion. I mean, every single time we hear you speak, your passion just comes through. So thank you very much. We're just going to quickly wrap up now. If anybody wants to continue this conversation, we're going to move over to our social channels. If you are in live.bigorangeheart.org, at the top of the webpage, you will see a link to social. We're going to go in there and we're going to start some tables. You can continue the conversations as we just said. Jenny, if you're able to
yeah, I would love to
join us, you'd be more than welcome to. But for now, I'm just going to pull up some slides. Jenny, thank you very much. We shall.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so just very quickly to wrap up before we move on to our social, we are incredibly grateful for for both of our speakers this evening, both Matt and Jenny. Really appreciate you giving your time to come and share your knowledge, share your experience with us, the community. We are continually looking for speakers. So if you're interested, if you have, if you're considered ever giving a talk, then please do reach out to us. We have many opportunities for you to be able to come and share your experiences, share your knowledge with the community. Just want to say again a very, very big thank you to our sponsors. If you have the opportunity, then please do in your browser hit big.ht/thanks. That will send a tweet out to thank Automatic Cloudways, Dolly, Funnel Packs, Weglot, Winning WP, WPMU Dev, and Yoast for their support of Big Orange Heart and the events that we deliver to you, the community. We are always looking for feedback. We're always wanting to understand, are these events appropriate? Are they working for you, the community? Is the format working? Is the delivery working? We really want to understand whether or not this is the style of event, given the circumstances that we're in. Is it the right event for you, the community? So if you visit wpldn.uk/feedback, you'll be asked to answer no more than, I think we've just changed it. I think it might be 6 questions now, but it is entirely anonymous. You will not be asked to give your details over. This is just to make sure that we are able to deliver the most appropriate event to you, the community. And speaking of which, we've got a couple more events coming up. So for those of you that aren't aware, we have now started to deliver WPLDN daytime. We recognize that we spend a lot of time at our computers, at our screens, and possibly come the evening, we may not want to be spending more time at our screens consuming content. So we are now delivering WPLDN daytime on the second Thursday of every month. The next one will be the 9th of July from 1 p.m. in this exact same platform, just a shortened down version. So we'll be opening up registration for that tomorrow, and it would be great if you can come and join us through the daytime. Our next evening event will take place 30th of July, so it's always the last Thursday of the month. Again, we've got 2 fantastic speakers lined up. Really excited to be able to open up this event in a couple of weeks' time. So, as I mentioned, we're now going to move over to our social. If you are within live.bigorangeheart.org, up the top of your screen, you've got a link to social. Please feel free to start some tables, join a table. You can move freely between. There are no restrictions. Let's, as a community, connect and have conversations. This is why we're here, after all. That's it from me. Leo, Diane, Paul, anything else you want to add?
Thank you. No, nothing. I think
Thank you,
it's
everyone.
really good speakers tonight. Really good. Really enjoyed
Fantastic. Really good.
And there'll be plenty of tips, I'm sure. If you manage to join Jenny on a table, she's got brilliant tips. She already, when I was, like I said, when I was on Twitter saying, "Oh, I've just discovered a half-drunk cup of tea," she already told me about the tea warmer. She has some brilliant tips for staying cool. So if you are, get on her table and find out all of the tips that we just didn't have time to cover about, lockdown, heat, how to stay sane in it all.
I don't think sanity will stay.
There have been so many important things covered this evening. As remote workers, as a remote working community, it really is important that we discuss these things. We have an opportunity to be able to discuss them. So please do join us over in live.bigorangeheart.org/social. For now, Diane, Leo, Paul, thank you so much for giving your time. Looking forward to chatting with you in a couple of minutes. Take care, all.
Cheers,
Bye.
See you. Bye.